Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first web launch of the Commission's request for proposals. I'm Andrew Muir, Science Director for the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. Before we get started on today's webinar, I want to turn it over to Renee Renauer-Bova, who's the Fishery Research Program Associate for the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and she's going to provide a few housekeeping items.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all virtually. For housekeeping items, we ask that you please rename your window by clicking on the three dots in the upper right corner to fix it to be your first and last name and your affiliation, if that fits. And a friendly reminder to please remain muted during the presentation. And then if you're experiencing any technical issues, please feel free to use the chat to contact myself or Carrie Baker. We'll try to help you. And then during the end of the Q&A session, please use the raised hand feature and you can drop your question in the chat. And finally, we are recording this presentation, so it will be publicly accessible on our website afterwards. So by staying on, you are consenting to being recorded. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Andrew, we can get started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Renee. Appreciate that. So today we're going to go through a brief presentation, and then we've got ample time booked for discussion, and we will address any of your questions at the end of the presentation. So first, want to begin by introducing the staff and research board members from the Board of Technical Experts who have joined us today. So you met me and Renee. I'll go to Carrie Baker next to please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Carrie Baker. I'm the Assistant Programs Manager with the Commission, and I coordinate the Sea Lamprey Research Program.
Thanks. Julie Hinderer.
Good afternoon, Julie Hinderer. I'm the Science Programs Manager. I coordinate the Science Transfer Program.
All right. And I don't think Jess is on, is she? No. Okay, so we'll go to Brian Locke, member of the Board of Technical Experts.
Afternoon, folks. Brian Locke. On an assignment now, but I'm the manager for Lake Erie for the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Back from assignment soon and represent the Council of Lake Committees on the Board of Technical Experts.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Chris Vandergoot.
Chris Vandergoot. I am the director of GLaDOS, and I also have an appointment at Michigan State University.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So our objectives for today are first to provide you an overview of the Commission's research programs and funding processes, a very high-level overview. We'll then highlight some specific research needs for the fishery and sea lamprey research programs. Today, we're focusing on the fishery research program. We do have a second webinar that is very similar, but we'll focus on the sea lamprey research needs at a later date. And then third, to connect investigators with members of the research boards and staff to help answer your questions, but also so you have a familiar face and contact that you can reach out to should any further questions arise during the process of applying for funding. The Commission has a number of funding programs. For the purpose of the webinar today, I'm really just going to focus on the sea lamprey and fishery research programs. We'll, at the end of this talk, touch on a few of the other programs and talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available for those other funding programs. But for the purpose of the main presentation today, we're going to talk about fishery research, and the goal of that program really is to generate and make accessible a portfolio of science to inform the conservation and rehabilitation of healthy Great Lakes ecosystems that sustain fisheries and benefit society. The Sea Lamprey Research Program, the goal there is to generate and make accessible science to further the integrated control of sea lampreys, including the development of novel, effective strategies for their control. The Commission's programs are highly competitive. This slide shows you the mean funding rates over the past 5 years. We typically receive a high number of pre-proposals shown by the numbers in the bubbles. So 41, for example, an average over the last 5 years for the fishery program, and 16 for the sea lamprey research program. That number of pre-proposals gets winnowed down through the review process, which I'll describe to you, to a subset of full proposals that are requested. And of those, only slightly more than half are recommended to the Commission for funding. So overall, we have about 21% of the fishery pre-proposals that are submitted ultimately get funded, and about 33% of the sea lamprey pre-proposals ultimately end up being funded. The programs are highly competitive, as I mentioned, which sometimes gets misinterpreted a little bit. I want here to dispel the myth that you have to be in the club or be part of the Commission's programs to acquire funding. That's just simply not the case, and the data sort of bear that out. So a high priority for the Commission has always been to bring new investigators into the programs, and we've been successful at doing so. Over the past 5 years, we've had an average of 2 new investigators funded in each of the programs each year. So roughly 25% in the fishery program and 40% in the sea lamprey research program of proposals that get funded are led by new investigators. So it really is a high priority, and we're working to build capacity within the Great Lakes community for the future. So we do tend to focus on trying to help new researchers acquire funding through our programs. And this web launch, in fact, is intended to help bring you into these programs. So really a strong effort, and you'll see as we go through this that there are a number of ways that we can help assist in you preparing and submitting pre-proposals, and hopefully help your work ultimately be funded. During the history of the program, we've had over 120 different institutions being contracted. So our funding programs cast a broad net and are available to everyone. Okay, I'm going to now, for the next couple of slides, turn it back over to Renee, who is going to present to you a few details about our current request for proposals. Renee?
All right, so looking at this year's call for proposals, you can find the information about it on our website, and we're going to link that into the chat for you to have easy access. And our pre-proposals are due January 15th, 2024, and the pre-proposals must be submitted to the online proposal system, which is also going to be dropped in the chat for that link. Templates for the pre-proposals can be found online on our website. The templates contain specific instructions for completing the pre-proposals. Andrew will review the pre-proposals that are evaluated in more detail later, but I want to briefly highlight the theme areas. We have human dimensions of Great Lakes fishery management, re-establishment of native deepwater fishes, physical processes in fish recruitment of large lakes, energy dynamics of Great Lakes food webs, and the Council of Lake Committee's research priorities. The theme areas describe important topics related to the priorities of each lake committee. On each of the theme pages, you can find more specific information about the research needed respective to the theme. I strongly encourage investigators to read over the documents that are linked in our RFP to get a better sense of those research needs. If you would like guidance on how your research idea might fit into a theme, please contact me and I'll drop my email into the chat. And I would be happy to get in touch with you with a theme leader from the Board of Technical Experts who reviews these pre-proposals. And then for projects that do not fall under a current theme area, they may be supported under non-theme research. Right, so our call for special topics. The Fishery Research Program seeks to fulfill the priorities and research needs identified by the lake committees. This year's call for special topics include projects using mixed methods, correcting conservation and restoration, and declining offshore productivity and nearshore processes. These topics are highlighted to showcase the areas of greatest research need. For the first one, we are continuing to encourage projects using mixed methods. We feel that combining traditional and non-traditional methods strengthens research projects and their outcomes. I encourage you to read through the research theme papers on energy dynamics of Great Lakes food webs for more information and reach out to those theme leaders. Correcting restoration and conservation has continued to be an important research focus for the Commission and our partners. Previously, we have highlighted research focused on improving the biological understanding of these populations. This year, we are calling focus on their roles in the prey fish community and ecological drivers of their population dynamics and recruitment. For more information, please see the Correcting Restoration Framework, which we will also be linking in the chat. For declining offshore productivity, this special topic most closely relates to the energy and nutrient dynamics theme. We are looking for research that improves coordination between the fishery and water quality managers. And I'm happy to serve as a liaison between the interested research and those theme leads. So taking a look at our project PHP system, this is a screenshot of what the proposal system looks like when you're signing in to submit your pre-proposal. So you're going to click through those tabs outlined in the red box at the top, and each one is going to contain the instructions you need to fill out the proposal submission. Now I will turn it back to Andrew.
Okay, great. Thanks, Renee. So our funding is allocated on a one-year cycle, beginning in November, which is now. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. With the release of our 2024 request for proposals, which solicits research that would begin in January of 2025. Pre-proposals are due January 15th. The research boards convene in March in the spring to review those pre-proposals. Successful pre-proposals are then invited to submit a full proposal, which is due on the 1st of June. Those proposals are subject to an external review, which is coordinated by one of the board members with relevant experience in that focal area. All board members also review the full proposals, and they use or draw on the peer reviews to inform a discussion and evaluate those full proposals at their fall meeting in September. So we just got through the fall meeting for last year's round of proposals recently. Out of those fall meetings come a set of recommendations by the board on which projects to fund, and those recommendations are then considered by the commission at their December interim meeting. And we're actually just preparing right now for the interim meeting, which happens next week, where commissioners will approve a set of research projects for the upcoming research cycle. And then projects that are approved this December will be able to begin in the beginning of the new year, so on 1 January. So it's roughly a one-year cycle for the whole process. Our website, which I'm going to show you in a few slides from now, provides a whole bunch of detail, and I agree and admit that it is a little bit challenging to navigate, so we're going to help walk you through a few of those pages here. But it does provide a lot of details on the proposal review and evaluation process. I want to mention to you that at the pre-proposal stage, really what you're trying to do is get your foot in the door. So focusing on the key elements that the boards are actually reviewing at the pre-proposal stage is critical. So what the boards typically focus on here, number one, is relevance to the research themes, to the control board and Council of Lake Committee research priorities, and to the commission's strategic vision. So that's really sort of check one to kind of get your foot in the door. Is this work that you're proposing relevant to the commission and its partners? So pre-proposals are only one page, so you need to be concise and provide cogent rationale for how your work meets the needs of the commission and its partners. You also need to demonstrate that the research is broadly feasible. So, for example, demonstrating that the samples you are proposing to analyze can actually be acquired. So you're not asking for a sample of 14,000 lake trout, for example. It has to be broadly feasible. Providing proof of concepts for methods, so not just saying you can do something, but showing that you can do something is really important. Making sure that the budget is commensurate with the proposed methods. and that co-investigators have the appropriate skill sets to implement the methods. So really the key is trying to think about not just saying you're going to do something or proposing that you're going to do something, but demonstrating within that pre-proposal that you can actually do something or do what you're proposing. So that's what we're talking about with respect to broad feasibility. We don't need to get into the very details about the methods or other things. That comes in at the full proposal stage. So full proposal is really the place where you provide or investigators provide the detailed literature synthesis and full methods at that point. The boards there focus on scientific merit and scientific feasibility in much more detail. Really at the pre-proposal stage, you have to demonstrate feasibility in a broad sense, and then at the full proposal stage, specific scientific feasibility of the work you're proposing. One of the key areas to focus on in your pre-proposal are the objectives, and we provide some pretty explicit guidance in the proposal template for how to craft objectives. And remarkably, it's still one of the main challenges that we encounter at the pre-proposal stage. So really, really pay attention to the instructions that are provided in that template, and it will help you craft objectives that are actionable and acceptable to the board. I do want to point out that one of the other challenges we see is that a lot of our documentation says that, you know, what we fund is applied work, applied research, and that's particularly true in the sea lamprey program, where it's very applied, controlling an invasive pest in the Great Lakes. But we do fund a broad portfolio of science ranging from basic to applied. So the key here is really being explicit about what you're proposing. So oftentimes people sort of force descriptive or hypothesis generation type of research, or social science type of research, for example, into a hypothesis testing framework that may not be appropriate. So please try not to do that, and just be explicit about the kind of research you're proposing. It's okay to propose basic science or hypothesis generation or descriptive kind of science, but be explicit about it and don't try to force it into a hypothetical framework. The Commission and its research boards have, over the last couple of years, placed an emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural competency. And we're working to build some of those principles into the programs. They're now beginning to be reflected in our programs, and we're asking PIs not just to submit a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, but to demonstrate how those principles and actions contribute to inclusive excellence in the proposals you're putting forward. So one way to do that is to partner with local experts, for example, or Indigenous communities. When you're working within Indigenous territories, talk to them, talk to the people who are affected by the work that you're doing, and consider inviting them to partner with you. I previously mentioned this, but if your research requires agency support or institutional facilities or vessel time, for example, or agencies to collect samples for you, make sure you talk to them well in advance of proposing the research, because we've heard from some of the management agencies that becomes a challenge to them, that they hear about a need for samples far after their planning process and planning schedules occur. So talking to them is good, but talking to them in a timely way well before you put your research forward is very helpful to them. And then finally, I mentioned our commitment to bringing new investigators into the programs. For that reason, I am willing to discuss research ideas and review pre-proposals that you're preparing. That's something that we offer to do. Keep in mind that that's just one person's opinion, and there's an entire board plus peer review process. But we do offer to help and address any questions about your research ideas that may come forward. Okay, so the last part of this talk, in the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through some of the elements of our website and try to highlight some of the resources that are available to prospective investigators. So if you feel like it, you can open a browser and kind of follow along, but otherwise, you'll see where we're going here in the slides. So you can start at Science and Research. If you click that, the sub-pages are highlighted here. Click on the funding for research page. And what that brings up is a page with a whole ton of information on it, as well as a sub-menu that you can see. I've got it pasted here on the left-hand side. The sub-menu, or this first sub-page really provides an overview of all of the different funding programs. It also provides links to previously funded research, so you can kind of peruse that and get a sense for the kinds of things and the sort of quality of projects that are funded by the commission. I encourage you to take a look at that page if you're thinking about research ideas. This page also provides a handy decision tool, which I'll go over at the end of the talk here. Gives you an idea of where your project fits within the available kinds of funding and the funding program. So it'll help you sort of align your project with a likely funding program, because we do have a number of them. You can also access the proposal and templates for all of the programs from this page under forms and templates, the forms and templates submenu over on the left-hand side here. So I'm going to go through a couple of these pages here. So within the funding for research section, the first area I want to point you to is the policies and guidelines page. This page provides detailed policies regarding new investigator criteria, for example, so whether or not you fit the definition of a new investigator, data sharing policies, equipment and publication policies, as well as policy on indirect costs. So the commission has a 5% maximum indirect cost rate that's associated with all of our funding programs. So you'll want to pay attention to that one in particular as you're putting your budget together. So please review these policies prior to preparing your pre-proposal. We also have on this page the instructions for peer reviewers. So you can actually go in and see how exactly the peer reviewers are going to be looking at your proposal. So you know, this is really for the full proposal stage, but you can get a good sense for what they're going to be looking for in a full proposal. All right, the forms and templates subpage provides a link again to each of those specific forms for the funding programs. The templates do differ for each of the programs, so make sure you're working in the correct form or template when you're preparing your proposal or pre-proposal. The Science, Resources, and Facilities page provides information on the commission-supported facilities that could potentially be of use to PIs. So if your institution, for example, lacks specific infrastructure or equipment that you might like to fulfill your research objectives, consider partnering with an institution like Hammond Bay that is a world-class sea lamprey research station and is equipped to do that kind of work. We also have the Great Lakes Acoustic Telemetry Observation System, and Dr. Chris Vandergoot, who's on the webinar, is the director of that program. That's infrastructure throughout the Great Lakes for telemetry. So that's a resource that you can tap into if you're interested in fish behavior, dynamics, those kind of movement, those kinds of questions. We also partner with the RAYON network, the Real-Time Acoustic Ecosystem Observation Network, run out of the University of Windsor. So there's some information on that program. That's basically a 4-loan program. There's all kinds of equipment, AUVs, receivers, monitors, all kinds of high-tech equipment that's available to support research programs in the basin. The Great Lakes Aquatic Habitat Framework is a database that has all kinds of mapping and GIS-based information, spatial information about Great Lakes habitats. That's something you could tap into. There's also a number of forums available on that page. So sea lamprey, for those interested in sea lamprey research, you can request animals to support your research through this form. And there's a number of other resources available on that page. If you need quantitative support for some of the work you're doing, there's a link to Michigan State's QFC. And we've also recently launched at the University of Guelph the Center for Ecosystem Management. So that's another potential resource that is available. All right, I previously mentioned this decision tree, which is intended to facilitate aligning your work with one of the Commission's funding programs. So in addition to fishery and sea lamprey research programs, the Commission supports pilot projects, science transfer projects, and technical assistance projects for both sea lamprey and fishery management. I just want to highlight here the pilot project because that funding pot is intended to provide up to $20,000 to explore new hypotheses or concepts or acquire preliminary data to help guide the development of full research proposals. So I mentioned previously that a key to successful pre-proposal for either of the sea lamprey or fishery research programs is to demonstrate feasibility. So if PIs can't easily demonstrate the feasibility of a method they want to use, they could first consider applying for pilot dollars to ground truth their method and then use those data or those results as the rationale for a future proposal. That's really a very successful route to getting your work funded is undertake the pilot work to show the board the utility of what you're proposing. Second program I want to highlight is science transfer, and Julie Hinder, she is the lead for our science transfer program. This program is intended to put data and information generated throughout the basin and beyond into the hands of fishery managers and sea lamprey control agents in novel ways that are digestible to them and to their constituents. So I encourage you to check out the science transfer page and look at the science transfer toolkit. This is a little different program and it places the focus less on peer review publications and more on unique tools that can be used by managers and their constituents. So this is the same funding cycle I previously showed you, but I just wanted to highlight that there are a couple of additional deadlines on here, pilot projects, and the technical assistance for sea lamprey and fisheries are due January 15th for consideration in the spring. Those same programs are also available in the fall, so you can apply for them 2 times throughout the year. So there's an August deadline for fall consideration of the technical assistance dollars, and then July for the second pilot project call. And then science transfer project ideas are due sometime around now. Okay, and with that, I'll kind of end and leave you with our contact. We all have emails, individual emails, which some of you may have, but also if you want to be certain that your email is found, submit it to the research@glfc.org, because that box is constantly monitored and we'll make sure we get back to you. So we'll end the presentation piece and I will call on Chris and Brian to see if there's anything you wanted to add to that summary we gave of the programs, and then we can step into the discussion and Q&A portion of the webinar.
Briefly, Andrew, we do have some other Board of Technical expert panelists here as well if they would like to introduce themselves. We have Chris Wilson, Ellen Marsden, Wei-Ming Lee, Jean Kolpin-Schmidt, and also, as well as Brian Locke and Chris Vanderpool, who have joined us today.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, please do introduce yourselves. We'll start. Renee, call out that list one by one, please, if you would.
Sure. And if you want to say your institution as well, if you were a theme leader, which theme you lead, that would be helpful as well. Chris Wilson, would you like to start, please?
Okay, I'm non-theme member at large. I'm a research scientist with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, based at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario.
Thank you. On to Ellen.
Hi, I'm Ellen Marsden. I'm faculty at the University of Vermont, which is a little outside the Great Lakes, but that's not entirely unusual. The Commission draws from various expertise. I'm a member of the core group, but not a member of a theme area, not leading a theme area.
Thank you. Wei Ming, if you're still on. I see you're unmuted, Wei Ming, but we can't hear you. You might be having some technical difficulties. So while we're sorting through that, we can go on to Jean. I think she had to hop off too. Yep. Jean, are you still on with us? If so, you're also muted. Let's see.
Hi, this is Wei Ming again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So somehow my headset was not working well. This is Wei Ming Li. I'm from Michigan State University. I'm also a scientist closely associated with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. I'm not sure I'm leading any particular theme, but I'm very interested in all the research programs that I have been participating.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks to the additional board members who joined us. All right. Well, we'll go through and address any questions that anyone may have, or comments, or any additional details that board members would like to add to what we presented here today. We'll open up the floor.
Yeah, Andrew, just quickly, from a fisheries management perspective, you know, these programs are so important because they are, they're providing us with a lot of information about important things like fisheries management needs. We have a lot of association with folks supporting stock assessment work, for example. And of course, the Sea Lamprey program is incredibly critical to protecting our fisheries resources. I should say that the programs here represent an important linkage between management agencies and researchers. And we've had many grad students funded by these programs move into our agencies or the academic community around the Great Lakes. And it's a really great opportunity, not just to have funding and support for projects, but also to form collaborations across that broader Great Lakes network and beyond, in fact. So I do place a high value in this program or these programs, and really encourage people to apply for that kind of whole suite of reasons. And I'm sure some that I've missed.
Yeah, those are great points, Brian. Thanks for sharing that.
So
I can follow very. Go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to echo Andrew's comments about the pilot studies. I think those are like a very valuable resource, particularly, you know, if it's a proof of concept, you know, even if you're just like getting into telemetry kind of stuff, whether or not it's feasible to capture fish at a certain time rather than going into a full-blown project. I think that's been a huge benefit to a lot of projects, is capitalizing on that pilot study option that the Commission makes available.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, we'll go to Ellen, and then Susan Cushman has a question.
Cool. I was also going to follow up from Brian's comment that the way in which the Commission facilitates networking, particularly for young investigators, is extremely valuable. And should it happen that you submit either a pre-proposal or a full proposal and it does not get funded or pushed forward to the full proposal stage, it's very common for the board of technical experts to make suggestions about potential people to collaborate with, basically saying, great, you're new to this, you could use some help, maybe connections either with the managers or other expertise. And it really sort of, I think of it like bringing new investigators and existing investigators into the fold and helping with those collaborations.
Very good. Carrie just made an important point. Anonymous questions can be put into the chat as well, if you're unsure about raising your hand. Susan, go ahead.
Good morning or good afternoon, I guess. Just curious about the time frame of most of these proposals. So is there an upper limit of how many years the funding goes? Is there a common time frame of like 2 years, 3 years that is generally accepted, or is it all over the place?
It can vary. So there is no rigid limit. I would say over the last 5 or 6 years, the average duration of projects would be probably 3 years to 4 years, somewhere in around there, I would think. Do board members and staff agree with that? We have had an 8-year project, and the commission is funding a 10-year commitment as well outside of these research programs. So it really just depends on what you're proposing. I think if it is longer than average, we might want to have some discussions and try to sell that idea ahead of time a little bit. Probably, yeah, I'd say probably 3 to 4 years is probably where most of the projects fall.
There are shorter ones as well, but they're not as common as the others.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, how about this? Can people raise their hand if they're considering submitting a pre-proposal this year or interested in submitting a pre-proposal? I just want to get a sense for how many folks are thinking about that. Okay, great. Seeing a bunch there. Okay. All right. One of the I think Brian sort of mentioned it, or Chris or someone, but getting a proposal in is really a good way to start connecting to the network. And it's in fact how I got involved in the Great Lakes. When I was finishing my PhD, I met someone and was encouraged to draft a proposal. And at the time I was, as a PhD student, I was not allowed to actually apply for Great Lakes Fishery Commission funding. So the main PI applied on my behalf, and that's really a large part of how I got involved in Great Lakes research. Okay, Corey, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks so much for having this. This has been helpful. In looking at some of the past projects, I see most of the work that's happened in tributaries of the Great Lakes has been focused on sea lamprey. I'm wondering if there's a priority in the fishery research program for work on the lakes themselves as opposed to the rest of the watershed or basin.
So are you asking about a priority for inland kind of fisheries type work and connecting channels?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could answer the question more generally for other folks on the call, but I'm specifically wondering about tributaries to the lakes themselves.
Okay, Brian, can I call on you to talk a little bit about that? Because you're much more familiar with all the fish community objectives. And
yeah, for sure. I would say that the tributaries are completely in scope, given how they contribute to the overall productivity in the lakes and production. So I think they're entirely within scope. There are lots of projects going on within the broader lake committees that include work on sturgeon and the connecting waters, or restoration projects for sturgeon in the Maumee Basin, for example. I mean, yeah, I think they're completely in scope is the easiest way to put it.
Great, thank you.
If I can add to that a little bit, there is fairly often a focus on the lakes, but as Brian said, the tributaries are really key elements of the whole ecosystem and its function. So if you or anybody on this has an idea of basically, if you see a gap that we're not addressing but is very relevant to the Great Lakes, please put something in. And this is part of the importance of engaging the broader research community. What is important that we're not aware of? So those are extremely useful.
Yeah, and that's well said, Chris. And I think generally speaking, right, you have these broader research theme areas. And like Chris said, if there's a gap under that theme area that you see or an area of interest that you should pursue and you see obvious implications that might span other research priorities, then I think it's fair game.
Yeah, very good. I'll just add one thing. We don't have anyone from our energy and nutrient dynamics theme, but we do have a theme on that. We also have a special topic on declining offshore productivity, but both of those two areas of research are necessarily linked to inland processes and loading of the lakes through tributaries. So there's a real strong connection there. Okay, we have if I may, there's a comment in the chat from Jean. Is that something I need to read, Carrie, or is it just a comment for people?
Jean was just introducing herself via chat. She's in a spot where she can't turn on her microphone right now, so.
Okay. Yeah, and Jean has joined our board of technical experts last year as an early career research fellow. So it's been wonderful to have her perspective. Her background is in environmental science and human social science elements of ecosystems. So we appreciate her joining us, but she's unable to join in the conversation. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts about process or ideas? Okay. All right. Do folks then feel like they have an adequate understanding of the process here, and you're all set to go to generate some good pre-proposals this winter? If not, we did provide that email. You can certainly reach out and we can connect you with board members, even board members who are not here within theme areas, and we are more than willing to help you get going.
One other thing is, if you're uncertain about putting something in, but you've got an idea you'd like to pursue, have a look at the pre-proposal template. You see, it's not that intimidating. So it's if you can boil your idea down into a few paragraphs, have a look and yeah, show us what we're missing.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. If nothing else, you will get some constructive feedback to help develop your ideas further in the coming years. Okay, well, thanks everybody. We really appreciate it. Also, one last thing, if you have any input on how we can better serve you as new potential PIs through this webinar process, please do provide any input to Carrie, Renee, or myself. This is the first time we've done this, so if we can do better or do something different, we are more than willing to entertain your feedback.
And thanks to our board members who joined today too. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, huge thanks.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if you know anyone who couldn't make it today but was interested, we'll be having the sea lamprey focused webinar next week as well.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Yes.